Surveys can be the fastest, most powerful way to get data, but producing accurate and actionable insights requires building your survey with analytics in mind. Welcome, friends and foes, to yet another Data Devotional. I'm Luciano Pesci, founder and CEO of Emperitas and Nexum. The data problem that we're going to tackle today starts in the split survey focus of stakeholders and how this limits the actionability of the insights that are produced from the survey. There are usually three competing stakeholder interests at play whenever a survey is being deployed. The first are those who are going to field the survey. They're going to collect the information. These individuals need to balance the functionality of the survey from the respondent's perspective with the limitations of the software tool they're going to use. The second set of stakeholders are those who are going to analyze the resulting data, and they seek to maximize the information that can be extracted from the data itself. The third set of stakeholders are those who have to act on the data, and they have to balance what the information is telling them with what they're actually capable of doing. Because each of these stakeholder groups, if we want to call them agents, each have their own interests, this opens up the possibility for something called the Pincipal-Agent problem. The link at the bottom of this slide will explain what the Pincipal-Agent problem is to you in detail, but at its core, it is a difference in incentives. Because each of these stakeholders has limitations and goals that differ from the other, it opens up the possibility that the incentives that are driving each of them individually are at conflict collectively. Often, the Pincipal-Agent problem is explained in the context of two individuals. One's a principal, one's an agent. In this case, the role of principal and agent varies depending on where the data is in the process. When you're collecting it, you're the agent, and the principals, in this case, are those who are going to analyze it and those who are going to act on it. And those roles and titles will change based on who is handling which portion. This leads to inefficiencies, and in the context of the analytics, it can make things 10 times harder. To borrow some terms from economics, we can group these inefficiencies into types of costs. You have the sunk cost of collecting the wrong information. It's just the wrong set of insights, and it's not going to help you. The cost has been spent, and there's nothing you can do. That's distinct from the fixed costs when you collect the right insights, but maybe in the wrong way. So instead of collecting something in numeric form, you collect it in categorical choice options. Or instead of collecting something in categorized choice options, you collect it in an open-ended text field. You have the information, but not in the form that you would have preferred. Finally, there are variable costs, and this would be the ability to get the right insights in the right way, but you're going to have to spend to do that again. All of those costs are possible inefficiencies that result from these competing incentives that are driving the different survey stakeholder types. If I had to put some hard numbers on it, I would say that 60% of this process is being driven by those stakeholders who collect the information. Another 30% is being driven by those who are going to analyze it. And the final 10% is those who are going to act on it. As a consequence of that distribution of the labor, what you have seen on surveys is a hyper-focus on the survey respondent experience, which has a measurable impact on things like the response rate and completion rate. That's why it's important to follow the best practices of survey research. Those have been previously laid out in an Emperitas video, How to Step Up Your Survey Research Game, linked here below. But just because it works well for the respondent and it produces data does not mean that that data is ideal or even usable for the analytics that need to be done in order to then act. Designing the survey in a way that optimizes the analytics is not often by default at odds with the respondent experience. It's simply a matter of aligning those goals, and then that allows you to create a survey that aids in analysis and enables the effective production of accurate, actionable information. Let's connect the effects of split survey stakeholder focus on analytics with the tools that are available in most survey software. All of the survey software tools that I'm aware of deal with what I would group together as the micro issues. These are things in the structure and design of the survey itself, and that's where these tools excel. But the bigger macro problems affecting the split stakeholder focus on the survey, those can be solved with a SMART goals session. If you're unfamiliar with the SMART goals process and the acronym itself, there is a link here on the slides that will help you. But you should not head into any software tool until you have conducted a SMART goals meeting around the purpose of the survey with those stakeholder groups all present. That will allow you to knock out these bigger macro issues and focus even more effectively in the survey tool on the micro issues. For each of these micro issues that I'm about to explain, I'm going to use Qualtrics as the primary example for two reasons. One, we're going to dive into Qualtrics here momentarily, so providing you with resources that support and understand that makes sense. Second is that they have the best tool by far and the best online resources to support learning that tool. So micro issue number one, clear labeling and pre-coding. All of these survey software tools give you the option to change the way that choice options are displayed and worded, the type of question that you're going to use, whether you're using a multiple choice single select, a multiple choice select all that apply, an open-ended text form, a data collection field, image selection. All of that is controllable by the researcher in these software tools. So there's no excuse to have sloppy wording within a single question or to have bad, inconsistent wording across the same kinds of questions throughout the survey. This is grammatical. But having a consistent way in which you identify select all that apply questions in the question wording also helps with the eventual analytics, because that's going to show up at the top of a column as the description for a survey question. And knowing that it was a select all that apply versus a single select will lead to a different set of analytical tools being applied. Question numbering is another important place where you can be very consistent. Many of these tools will create the question number automatically, which means if you're deleting questions as you go, you get to the end of the survey and the logical ordering of the questioning is gone. You can go back and set the question numbers. You can identify messages to the respondent as something distinct from questions themselves. This is not just helpful in the eventual analytics, because as an analyst, I know that I'm either looking at a column that is a message or a column that has data in it, but it helps me track where individual pieces of information fall in the overall flow for respondents. And if there's logic involved, I can identify that through the question numbering. So clear and consistent labeling is the first and most important basic foundation for solving these micro issues in survey design that results in difficulty analyzing. But that's the baseline. You can go much further. And the next step is to recode values. This is where Qualtrics in particular excels. How something is shown to the respondent is not necessarily how it shows up in the dataset. You as the researcher have the ability to set both as you'd like. Show it to the respondent in one way, possibly with text, and then on the back end, code each of those text options as a numerical value. Or if you want, you can keep it as text. The next way to solve these micro issues is with the use of blocks and survey flow. Questions in most of these tools can be grouped into question blocks. Those blocks should have some kind of logical consistency in the types of questions they contain. An example of this would be demographics. Scattering demographic questions throughout the survey, not very ideal. Putting them all together in one place, that's better from the respondent's perspective, that's better for you as a researcher. It's also easier for me as the analyst dealing with the data on the back end. Not every question has to be shown to every respondent, not every block has to be shown to each respondent. But once you have questions in blocks and blocks in a logical order, you can then determine the survey experience of any one respondent moving through all of these questions and blocks. That flow through the survey can be triggered in real time using logic. Most of these survey tools will allow you to branch a respondent from one place to another based on logic, display certain things, skip certain things, put in pipe text based on previous responses or embedded data. All of this is happening because you have programmed logic into the survey. You didn't just put the question there and you didn't just put it in a block. You've now determined on a question by question basis as necessary or a block by block basis as necessary where logic will be involved to either show something or not show something, do something or don't do something. This is one of the main advantages that digital surveys have over dumb, pencil and paper, old-style surveys. Because this kind of customization will not only allow you to provide a better respondent experience, it will allow you also to get better data, more accurate data, that can be analyzed in a more efficient way so that you can act on it. The last survey software solution for these micro issues is embedded data. Most of the tools have a way to append information that's outside of the survey to a survey response, typically by using a unique identifier in the form of an email key. This is an easy way in real time to append external information to a survey response without requiring some kind of merge later on. But the real power from embedded data comes from your ability to use it for customization. You can use it to trigger paths, survey flow, the display of certain blocks or questions, the skipping of certain questions. You can pipe in text from embedded data without having to ask a respondent for something to then pipe in. When it comes to customization, utilizing external data through this embedded data option is a powerful way to solve some of the micro issues. Embedded data can also be used for setting quotas, which is a really nice feature if you're part of the collector stakeholder group. So let's solve this data problem of split survey stakeholder focus with a real-world example using Silvermint and Qualtrics. We have covered this a few times, most importantly and recently in the two-part EDA videos. But the Silvermint survey reached out to crypto users of specific types defined here as agents, because this is part of an agent-based modeling for the tokenomics of the Silvermint blockchain token. The two links on this slide, which have been shared previously, will get you up to speed both on the devotionals and on crypto if you are new to that. The two links on this slide, however, provide something new that you haven't had access to even through the previous Silvermint-themed data devotional videos. The first link is to a Google Drive folder containing the QSF That's the Qualtrics survey file. It is a Qualtrics specific file extension. If you have a Qualtrics account or access to a free account, you can upload that file and you can view what we're going to go over yourself and play with it, change anything, modify anything about it you want. In that same folder is a Word doc export from Qualtrics with all export options possible. So it includes all the question numbering, recoded values, the logic, the skip logic, display logic, the flow, everything. The second link will take you to what you're seeing on the screen, which is preview mode of the survey. That will allow you to play with the Qualtrics survey as the respondent would. You can see it in the desktop view or mobile view. You can hide mobile view if you don't want to see that. You can place bookmarks, which will allow you to test skip logic at certain branch points. If you have the QSF file, you can upload it and then you can enable your own live preview, but this is the live preview of the example version that I'm about to show you in Qualtrics. Speaking of Qualtrics, here we are. What you'll notice is first that questions have been grouped into blocks. These blocks have clear titles. Those titles are for each of the agent types that we're after in the survey. There were quotas set to these agent types. Those agents are being determined in real time through the filtering block. If you watch the EDA video, then you may have seen some of the analysis around Q4, but a lot of the definitions about where people will go in the rest of the survey were determined on this question. Within any question, you will see clear question wording that is as consistent as possible, but not perfectly consistent throughout the entirety of the survey. You will see clear question options. Those question options have been recoded on the back end to have numerical correspondence. The recoded values can be downloaded like this, and you'll see that 98 is an important number that's repeated anytime there's an other please specify across the data set. So across all these questions, anytime that we have an other please specify, we're going to use the same 98 coding. That's different from the 99 coding that we'll use for prefer not to answer options throughout the survey. But every question, if you go into it, you will see that it has been recoded. Or if it is a box form field like this, it has some kind of content validation. So labeling is clear, question wording is clear. We use consistent approaches across questions throughout the survey, and everything has been organized into blocks. You can see some of the display logic on the questions themselves here. If you go into individual questions, in some cases you'll see skip logic, you'll see pipe text from previous options that were provided. But you can also see the survey flow here in the survey flow. This shows the overall flow for the respondents, including termination if they don't qualify, and the way that branching will work. This is also included in that Word doc export. It takes a little bit of studying to be able to decipher it. It's much easier to do in the QSF file if you can load it into your own Qualtrics account. Here at the top, you'll also see that we are using embedded data. This is a data field that's being captured by Qualtrics through URLs. So Qualtrics produced specific URLs for us to distribute in the omni-channel solicitation of the soft launch through some of the social media platforms and through anonymous links. That allows us, with a very small amount of the data, if you go to the EDA file and you go and look at this field, you'll see that it's mostly empty because this was only done during the soft launch to test those channels. Those channels did not prove to be viable, so we abandoned them. But this embedded data field is there in the data set and can be used. Had we continued with those different sources, then we would have been able to see how survey responses differed by the channel that they came in. One final comment on the flow. Because of the way that the flow works, not every question is going to have the same kind of n value. So as different branching takes place, it's important for you to understand how that's going to affect the n size of the group that did see the question versus the group that didn't see that question. This becomes very obvious in the EDA related to this specific survey file, because there were some questions that were answered by 1,000+ people and other questions that were only answered by a few dozen. Okay, back to the survey design itself. This is what the QSF file should look like when you import it. If you have questions or issues, please reach out to me. But go in and look. Compare how we do yes/no questions and how they are always coded 0, 1, with yes always as 1 and 0 as no. You can confirm this for yourself here. And you can even find an error. Here's an error that I found during the EDA process. Let me scroll quickly down to Q65. You will see here that in this question wording, it says, what are the main reasons you would abandon a development project? Select all that apply. This is only being displayed to those who have described their crypto activities as being a DApp developer or said they were a computer developer. For those who are savvy in survey research or Qualtrics, you might recognize that radial buttons indicate single select, not multiple select. This question was programmed incorrectly. It has been set to a single select when the intention was a select all that apply. This was discovered in the analytics. because in the analytics, we started to apply the approaches that are required for a select all that apply question type. It was failing. As we started to dig into the R script, why it was failing, it became obvious. We didn't have variables with those names, which we assumed we had because the variables have the consistent naming by question. And if it had been a multiple select question, it should have been Q65_1, Q65_2, etc. for each of these choice options. Instead, it was just Q65. That's when we discovered that there was this issue, but we were basing our analytics approach on what we could see with the question wording because that's how we were interacting with the field. So everything that you're doing in the survey design will ultimately impact how the analytics are done. The more that you can involve the stakeholders who will analyze the information in the design process, the better. Maybe they would have caught that. It was us involved. We all missed this. This went through multiple rounds of testing. It went through a soft launch, and we still all missed this. Here are those links again. The first link will get you the QSF file and the Word doc file. You can load it into Qualtrics and you can play with it. Or if you just want to interact through the preview mode, here it is on the screen. This is what you should expect to see using the second link. Keep your own progress going by downloading those files and modifying the survey flow, the question wording, the question blocks, recoding values, setting skip logic and display logic, and getting familiar with the wonderful tool that is Qualtrics. And we'll see you at the next one.